everybody, welcome to this episode of Coffee with John. Looking forward to talking to co-founders of Mutiny with Davis and Cole Schutjer. Did I say that right? Cole, I mean, I've known you for a long time, so I
crushed it.
Nailed it. No concerns over here.
Thank you. Fellas, I'm really excited to connect with both of you on your business because I think it's something that's going to be new to a lot of people's ears. And your company, Join Mutiny, which is joinmutiny.com. If someone were to go to the webpage, what they're going to see is everyday people become owners in the brands that they love. This is kind of an interesting concept. I think we're in a time where people feel out of control, and to give some level of control, I think, is a really positive thing. I think people sometimes feel like they're listening to influencers and buying products and helping, especially a lot of these new companies that they've never heard of because of social media, rise up, become very popular, become very profitable. And I think historically, they've never really thought the consumer of, wow, well, maybe I can actually, build some type of equity in this business. And so I think a lot of people are always thinking about new revenue streams in a time where things are very expensive for the majority, and enter joinmutiny.com, right? So you reward people for helping brands grow. So let's kind of start from the beginning, right? So that's kind of the current story. But how did this kind of come about? Like rewind to idea one.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and thanks for having us. A lot of this came, it's kind of an idea that's been brewing in my head for, I don't know, a decade. Like it's been a long time. I own a marketing agency as well, called Creatively, and we help people to grow e-com businesses, consumer brands. It is really kind of our specialty. And so have done that for years. I've helped a bunch of brands to launch using viral marketing, which I did before Creatively. Once I got Creatively going, I started building my own brands and have built our own brands that have done hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And so it just kind of became this thing that as time went on, over and over again, I was like, man, it's kind of this, I feel, almost broken process. I would often, as we launch new things, we'd go, market to the masses. We'd go create content. We'd run ads, or we'd launch off of a Kickstarter or something like that. And I would get these people to believe in us, and average people, normal people off the street, were believing in us first. They believed in the product. I don't know how many people have done a Kickstarter, but often Kickstarter backers will kind of identify as what backer number they were in the project. And so they'll say, hey, Jay, I'm backer 43. I want to give you some feedback. I want to give you some ideas. And I'm like, this is amazing that these people are so invested. But yet it like kind of started to like irritate me. Like, yeah, but they're not invested. They don't have ownership. They act more like an owner often than investors that I might have. And so it just became this thing that over time I was like, man, it's really crazy that I can't bring my early customers who believed in me so much and allow them to have ownership. And as we started to dive into it, and as I've thought about it over the years, I tried a bunch of different ways. We've tried Reg CFs, which is something that the government allows you to kind of make it more accessible for people to invest in a business, but it's really heavily regulated. It's hard to do. And so it's just, I kept being like, no, that's not really it. And I try something else, like, no, that's not really it. And so I just kept trying to find a way to, like, how do I involve my most passionate customers, my early adopters, these people who believe in us? How do we make it so that they're a part of the company and then they take part in that growth? And so, the idea was brewing for a long time. And then eventually I said, we got to build this and make this a reality and make it fun and gamify it and make them feel like they're part of the the team and part of the journey.
So, quick question, Cole, anything to add? Yeah.
Not to the origin story. I got to join the party when this seed was well planted with Jay and join Mutiny at the beginning of the year to help kind of lead the operations of the team. And what I've kind of come to know kind of current state is we're thinking hard about how do we solve ownership for two different audiences that have maybe different sets of challenges. One of them is, accredited investors, which the SEC defines as you've got $1 million of assets or more, or you make more than $200,000 a year consecutively for a few years. There's so many people in that bucket who would love to invest, but aren't in a position to write a $50,000 angel check to a business. Either that's too large of a check or that's too much risk in one bucket. But would they write, $5,000 checks over the course of a couple of years? Yeah, they sure would. But your average either fund or startup is not looking for $1,000, $5,000 investments. And so, their check size is too small and they just don't see deals. So we're trying to solve that for accredited investors. But what Jay really hit on is non-accredited investors, everybody who doesn't fit into that bucket, which is the larger portion of the United States, and kind of your average consumer. Right now, with very few exceptions, they can't write a check. It's fascinating that, I can empty my bank account in Vegas or in predictive markets and bet on, who's going to get the number one draft in the NBA, but I can't write a $500 check for a brand that I love and believe in. It's just not allowed today. So through kind of this cooperative structure that we've built, people can do things and earn equity, even if they can't sit down and write a check.
So I want to talk more about cooperative structure, but I first have a question that I think if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, so there's two lanes here. There's I have a brand that I want to put on the platform, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And there's the consumer that is actually purchasing what's on the platform and building some equity and ownership. So you, in your story, Jay, somebody comes and gives, feedback, because they just are passionate about the everything as your example earlier. Now enter equity and ownership. Now greed starts to kind of like creep into the equation, right? Greed of, what the platform or what the brand is willing to give and what the consumer now wants, that they know there's something on the table. How do you reconcile that so it's fair? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. And actually, I think we solve that better than other options. I mean, traditionally, for those who have raised money, often you're going and raising money from investors. You're then taking that money and you're paying platforms or other service providers to hopefully get an outcome. So, you take money that you raise from investors, you go pay Meta to advertise to a bunch of consumers, and you're hoping that you bring consumers in who are going to be your customers. Our thought is, why don't we create a better outcome and solution for both sides of that equation, the brands and the customers, and say, hey, rather than going and raising a ton of money from investors who then hopefully use that money to get the outcome you want, why don't you just offer that equity to the customers and say, hey, I need this outcome. If you help me get that outcome, I will give you some equity or ownership in my business. And so, Kickstarter is a great example where we are now able to incentivize people with some of the value of the product. So if you're selling a $100 product or you have a $100 product on Kickstarter, we can offer up to $100 of that backing as equity on top of getting the product. And so now all of a sudden you have people who are walking away. They're not just backing, a Kickstarter or a backer kit or one other crowdfunding campaign. Instead, now people have some ownership. And so I actually think it creates a more direct relationship because at the end of the day, every brand is trying to get customers. They're trying to get consumers. And we're saying, you still probably need investors for certain activities, but there's a lot of activities that it's like, why don't I just go to customers and incentivize them? I think another example is like going in store and buying things. When you launch in store, you need to make sure that you sell a bunch of product. And so incentivizing your customers, like, hey, go into the store and buy this and make this happen. So.
And how much equity does a company typically put aside? What's the reserve that they typically put aside?
I think it'll depend on the brand and kind of where they're at in their growth, whether it's 3%, 5%, 10%, or 20%, right? Because I think, at least to start off, we're working with earlier stage brands that kind of need that fuel to the fire to kind of start their growth plan. And but in dollars, some of the things that we've set up are in the $500,000 to $1 million, and kind of how we've thought about it is, what are activities that could support a brand's early growth? And we've got a whole menu of them, but depending on where the brand's at, they'll prioritize things differently. So things that are product related, going back the Kickstarter campaign, go and pre-order a product, go subscribe to a service, just buy it in store because, they just got into Walmart. So the most important thing to prove to Walmart is that they can turn over the shelf as quickly as possible. So, that's a big incentive. But there's also other things. And again, Jay referenced kind of MSRP as kind of our target, right? So if you're buying a $100 shoe, you could get somewhere up to $100 of equity for engaging in that. There's smaller stake things as well that don't cost money, right? Some teams, some brands really just need their social media to kind of grow. So, go and follow our account and we'll give you $1. Go write a testimonial about your favorite flavor of XYZ, and we'll give you $20 of equity. We can even do, for brands, we can do polls and surveys, to your point of like, how do you make sure you're listening to the consumer and making it fair? We can go to the consumers and say, hey, this is kind of what our branding looks like in A version and B version. What resonates more to you? Participate in this poll and we'll give you $10 of equity. And I know we're not talking about thousands of dollars yet, but we hope that, $100 after you do a few activities, $200, that in 2 to 3 years, through supporting the growth of the company and helping it be successful, rather than a standard investor who kind of writes a check and sits back and crosses their fingers and says, I hope this works out. You can kind of help influence the outcome. We hope that $200 becomes $1,000 in a few years when there's a liquidity event. So we're trying to really focus on, hey, this brand needs 3 things today. They need to grow their social, they need to turn over the shelf in Walmart, and they need this Kickstarter campaign to be successful because they're launching their 3rd unique new product. And that's where they're going to put all of their attention. And that's how we kind of want to create a movement of our consumer community to kind of act on that. And, we have 5 brands. We're going to add a couple more in the coming weeks. We hope to build this to where there's, 40 or 50 brands on our platform, and the average consumer can kind of look at the portfolio and say, I'm not into, men's shoes. I'm going to go focus my attention here, and I'm only going to engage in the brands that I love. It's really, we give agency. We want you to be driven by things you're passionate about, and then reward you for engaging.
So it's such an interesting. It's so interesting. And so I just want to clarify something. Do you get equity, you get ownership, and then with the hopes that there's a liquidity event at the end, the company sells, there's some type of big moment for everybody, and then they benefit as well. So if if X company sells to B company for $100 million, they get their kind of piece. But throughout the process, they're not getting quarterly distributions and things of that nature. I just want to kind of clarify that.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Great question. I think I've gotten quicker, Jay, at my legal framework explanation, if it's helpful. Do
you have your lawyer? Are you a lawyer by trade?
Claude has taught me a lot, but no, we have great legal partners who are kind of the leaders in the cooperative space in the country. And you think about, if you're an REI consumer, you can go to REI and, buy whatever, a backpack, sunglasses, and you walk away with your product. But you can also join the REI cooperative, and then you start getting kind of dividends every year. That's built for one brand. Our cooperative is built to support several brands, and an infinite number of brands. And how it actually works, because maybe some entrepreneurs are thinking, hey, no offense, guys, but I don't want to add 10,000 people to my cap table in $100, $1,000 tranches. So how it's actually set up is, we've established this cooperative that we've called Mutiny. People join the cooperative. And when we engage with a brand, we set up what's called a Series LLC that is wholly owned by the cooperative. We name that LLC, Mutiny /XYZ brand. So it's tied to that brand. That brand grants real equity to that LLC. And it's got a vesting schedule, not a time-bound vesting schedule, but a performance vesting schedule based off of the services that they're looking for in the community and the community performing those services. So those will vest as the community kind of executes the plan. And that equity will sit in that LLC until it is cashed out at a certain point in time. And then, if we've got 1 million members on our platform, but, for this brand, only 50,000 engaged with it. And they did different things. Some of them bought products, which is valued more. Some only engaged in social media. That cash will be distributed proportionately based off of the activities that you've done. And so that's, I have a pretty chart and a whiteboard in a longer setting, John, I can walk you through, but that's kind of how it works. So it's real equity that's owned by the cooperative, but it's distributed to the members that actually engage with the brand when there is a moment of liquidation.
Yeah, I love that. So question. So I think a lot of brands today are always looking for ambassadors, right? To your point earlier, Jay, I mean, looking for somebody who's going to, speak on behalf of the firm. It seems to me also that from what I'm hearing and seeing, kind of the influencer model is shifting a little bit, and people are really looking for true ambassadors of a brand, people who really are a little bit more, I think, intentional, and really, really connected to the brand. This seems to kind of connect those dots a little bit, right? Because the consumer then has to come in and really choose to engage. I'm assuming they typically, this is kind of a statement and a question, would be a fan of the product. And then once they buy the product or once they purchase something, they get a little bit of equity. What is then the marketing to keep them engaged, right? Is it proactive? Is it reactive? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's definitely proactive. I think that's one of the reasons we love this model is I think people have been trying to figure this out. They're trying to figure out, how do we engage with influencers is definitely a part of this. How do we reward them? How do we align interests and incentives? And so there's a lot of things that I think that a lot of positive benefits that this creates, because all of a sudden people have some skin in the game and they're saying, hey, if this brand wins, I win. And so I want to promote it. I think that also does generate more interest. We've seen this with our own brands. Our approach to influencers has often been, we just send people product and say, like, hey, first step, tell us if you love it. Like, if you don't love this product, like we don't really want to have a relationship and be forcing that. Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people are just, paying whoever will accept payment. And I think that consumers have started to pick up on that. They've started to see, like, these influencers are just, people for hire. Not all of them. I think the best influencers have led that more principled approach. And so they're promoting things they believe in. They're having longer relationships. They're not doing a ton of one-off brand deals. You can kind of see when an influencer just jumps from thing to thing to thing to thing. And the smart influencers are starting to realize, like, oh, that's hurting my audience. so, yeah, I think that it is connecting those dots, and it's also making it so that you can also have a longer term relationship, because in the beginning it can be equity based, it can be ownership based. And then as time goes on, if a brand all of a sudden hits a point where they're like, hey, we're doing 100 million a year, 200 million a year, we don't want to keep giving out equity. They can switch that and leverage the platform. And we are building tools to make it so that they can leverage the platform and just make payments, pay for some of that performance. But now you're paying someone who's part of the team. I mean, it's the same as like an employee. You hire an employee, you give them some ownership in a young startup. You're paying their salary, but they're really there because they believe in the startup. You need that belief to join a crazy, risky startup. And so I think it's aligning interests and really kind of building off of some of those same principles that have been used in startups to hire early employees and give them incentives to stick around and believe in the company.
Yeah. Cole, anything to add?
I think one of our kind of starting base is the average consumer, but we are building out our platform to include, hey, accredited investors, we want to give you access to more deal flow. And, we know $25,000, $50,000 checks is not the norm. So how do we give you opportunities at $1,000 to $2,000? But we're also building out the affiliate influencer part of it as well. And for all the reasons that you both described, and some of the feedback is, yeah, I would rather be doing this for equity and have a long-term relationship, not a transaction with a brand. And so, again, I think the ownership piece, certainly for me, there is a psychology involved where once I become, maybe I'm a consumer first, then I'm, a partial owner. Now I'm an advocate. And John, you and I met in the commercial real estate space.
Right.
That's where our relationship began. And how many real estate investments have we both made? And what is our ability to influence the outcome of those investments? I think mine rounds to zero. I invest in a building, I invest in a fund that I trust, smart people that I like. But my ability to influence the outcome, I don't think exists in that situation. And we're trying to create an environment where I can actually influence the outcome.
Yeah. I think it's great. So I just want to talk a little bit more about this. And so, when it comes to influence the outcome, like what type of voice typically do your brands want from consumers? Are they treating them like investors? Are they picking up the phone and calling them and asking them for feedback? Are they like, what's the relationship back and forth when it comes to, because it would seem to me that this is the greatest marketing group you could go to beta test or A/B ideas with people. People who are already invested. And so from a brand standpoint, how do they plan on using these people who are already choosing to connect?
Yeah. I think that part of that I would kind of start with a story, which also has influenced this idea and was some of the drive behind it. I remember pitching an investor for a product for our brand Pillow Cube, and we have a side sleeping pillow that. We have side sleeping pillows that we sell in Walmart. We have side sleeping pillows that are more expensive, but they're all like between $40 and $150. And I remember pitching an investor, and they were like, I don't know, like, well, does anyone want this thing? Like, it's it's $70, and I was like, well, we've sold 300,000 of them, so I think so. They're like, I don't know. I sleep on a $3,000 pillow and a $50,000 mattress. Like, I just don't think anyone wants stuff like this. And it was such an interesting, like, man, you're so disconnected from the reality of most human beings. Like, we get pushback on a $50 pillow for being too expensive.
Yeah.
Like, most people are not able to afford a $1,000 pillow, $50,000 mattress. And,
Right.
and from that experience, it like really cemented for me, like, the other benefit of working directly as consumers is they're the ones consuming most of these mass products. Like, they're the ones who are going to the store and trying to decide, like, hey, which which peanut butter should I buy for my kids? Which one's healthy, but that they like? And so I think that is another driver here is like, like you said, like, let's connect back into the people who are like, they're the marketing engine. They're also the ones consuming. And so all of that is done for us through the app. But we have built the app to really be the hub of, getting product feedback, really involving them in the process so that they can give product feedback. They can help us market, tell friends and family, and everything is rewarded so that, again, they feel like I'm part of this. I'm an owner. I can tell my friends and family. It's like the Green Bay Packers. They have a somewhat cooperative structure where they allow people to buy a certificate that says they're an owner in the team, but there's no financial rewards. You can't resell that ownership certificate. You can't make dividends. And so we want that feeling. We want people to have that emotion of like, I'm part of this, I own it, but we also want to cut them in on the upside. We want them to be able to see the swing from when, a brand's worth a couple $1 million to when a brand's worth $1 billion.
It's so interesting too, because like the two of you, like many people who are listening, you get surveys all the time. I get surveys all the time. Hey, will you rate X, Y, and Z or X, Y, and Z? And sometimes I do it if the person was really exceptional, but I do it a lot if the person's great. But I always think I'm giving them feedback to grow their business, make them more money, taking time to do this survey. I'm getting nothing in return, except the next time I go to buy the product, it's probably going to be more expensive. That's kind of like what I think.
Yep.
And you've kind of put a cure on that a little bit. I just want to make one more comment that I think is important. I'm a business coach. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies, everything in between. I work with salespeople, managers, executives, leaders, C-level execs, etc. I'm not saying that to impress, just to impress upon the following. A lot of times I'm in meetings and coaching when people say, I'll give one, for instance, like I got brought into this client and they had spent an ungodly amount of money trying to recreate a division of this mega business. And it was my first call with them. And so I said, okay, well, and after listening to them for like a half an hour, them download everything, I said, well, you have all these people from all these different places figuring out how to redo the department. Have you talked to anybody in the department? And they said, oh my God, we never, this has been going on. I got brought in, they had already been working on it for, I think, 6+ months. And then they said, we never thought of that. and so they've, here they are gathering all of these quote unquote experts and all of these people, but that simulates a bigger thing, right? I'll meet with companies. They'll say, we don't have our finger on the pulse. I'll say to the CEO or, a C-level exec, when was the last time you talked to a client? Right?
Yeah.
That's been forever. I said, well, why don't you just pick up the phone and call like a average consumer, like call 2 a day, So so it seems like your model has that for a brand at their fingertips. And so when I think of it seems like your model is the model of the future, right? You use a Costco Visa, you get money back. You use a credit card, you get money back. It sounds like it's an extension of kind of that philosophy a little bit, but it also seems like in today's world, this is a thought and a question. AI is moving so fast. I just saw something online from, I think it was Andrew Yang, that said he'd just been to a conference and what's going to happen in the next 6 months will be more powerful than what's happened in the last 10 years. And so things are moving really quickly. And so we have to get information and understand the pulse of what's happening with how people buy, how people perceive patterns, trends, different generations, all of that. It seems to me that you're kind of creating a solution for that with having like a built-in marketing team to give feedback.
And I'd even push you. I mean, the community of people becomes more and more valuable as AI solves process, technology, and kind of everything gets quicker, faster, easier, insights, all of that is true. I'm still debating whether or not my 14 and 12-year-old are ready to watch Terminator and understand what Skynet is to scare them with where we're at with AI. So that's all true, and it's certainly a part of our infrastructure and has been a huge part of our technology development. But that's why the community of consumers who can engage with brands becomes so much more valuable. It's your touch point with reality. It's your touch point with what the consumers are looking for. And even you nailed it from the brand perspective. So brands, we can kind of survey, we can facilitate those surveys and polls of, hey, what's the next flavor candy bar that you want, you know, A or B, and that's a pretty cheap investment to see what 50,000 people are thinking.
Yeah.
Mutiny, from our perspective, we haven't done this yet, but we've thought about, do we engage our community with, hey, we're looking at these 4 brands, which ones resonate to you the most? And again, as potential future owners, we really value their opinion and want their opinion. And so it's a little bit of crowdsourcing information on what consumers want, what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that's been, I think, one of the biggest lessons for all of our brands and every client we've ever worked on. And something we recommend as well. A lot of times we'll tell people, you know, when was the last time you talked to your customers? When was the last time you just jumped on a quick call and asked them, you know, what do you like? What do you not like? And almost all of our innovation has come, or I would say all of our innovation has come, as we've just talked to normal people who are like, hey, I love this. This could be better, or this could be changed. And so many of our new product launches and new companies have just come from listening and talking to people. And so a lot of this, you know, again, I think there's a really important role, and there are a lot of really great investors out there. But I think it's more about including more people. We're not trying to exclude anyone. We're not trying to cut out, you know, there's great VCs all across the country. There's great angel investors. But like, the consumers, in our opinion, have not been fully at the table. And we think they should be fully at the table. They are the people who you are selling to. They are the person that we are doing all of this work for. Yeah. And I realized that as we built more and more brands, like, our whole goal is to get these people to buy our products.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring them to the table and give them some incentive to help make sure we're doing it the right way?
I love it.
Can I share? Sorry, John. Do you mind if I share just one kind of quick case study, and I'll keep it a little bit anonymous, but there was a consumer brand that started, as many have, on Kickstarter. Let's go crowdfund. Let's see if this first edition of the product has demand, and let me get the funding to kind of do that first production run. And so they had a successful Kickstarter campaign, not quite $1 million, you know, $700,000, $800,000, which is a successful campaign, especially at that time. And they took that and then started to look for investors. That was kind of a proof of concept. Hey, there's demand for this product. So they found investors early on, and you know, rough numbers, maybe 10% of the company was invested in a $1 million investment and a $10 million valuation. That company has, fast forward, exploded to probably over a $10 billion company today. And that early, you know, VC investor did well with their $1 million investment, and they deserve to do well. They put a lot of money at risk, and but those early consumers who believed in the brand, who believed in the idea, they got version 1 of the product, which is what they were committed to. That's what they wanted, but they didn't get any of the upside, and it was their action that kind of proved the concept in general. And so imagine if those people who, you know, pledged $200, $300 at that point in time for a product and got the product and $200 or $300 of equity, that $200 would be worth $200,000 today. Yeah. And so we have great, actually, VC partners today who are both bringing us brands that they want to get on this platform, and they want to be some of the investment opportunities for those that are successful. So it's a partnership. This is, I think Jay and I are working on our phrasing, but it's like we're trying to bring capitalism to the masses. This is still kind of the belief in capitalism, and there's some ways to de-risk it because, you know, our non-accredited investors are just buying products and writing letters and writing testimonials. So there's not, you know, just putting capital at risk, but we're also de-risking it by trying to put a movement behind it. And so that's really the philosophy. And I love the case study. If you were to apply it to our model, there would be a couple thousand people pretty enthusiastic about the success of that brand.
And that brand happened in the course of 7 years. I mean, it's not like wasn't 40 years later. So 7 years from $300 to 200,000 is a pretty good.
That's a good return. Conscious capitalism is a really good thing. A couple of things, a couple of comments on that. You never know what an idea is worth. I would probably venture to say that those $200 users probably shared ideas that probably the VC people may or may not have been as close to as grassroots. That's an assumption. But I also just want to chat about for a second, just a comment on your talk, Jay, on innovation, which is sometimes innovation, you know, is just addition by subtraction and falling in love with the problem, not just throwing a solution on it. And that's sometimes when you're just talking to the everyday consumer, that's what you get, the stripped away simplicity that is hidden in plain sight. That's what I love about your model. A couple things about your model. If I'm listening right now and I'm a brand, how do I know if I'm a right fit for your platform, Mutiny? How do I know if I can even make the cut? Like, what type of brands are you taking on your platform? You know, what's that story?
Yeah, no, that's a good thing for us to kind of explain. So really heavy focus and really kind of solely focused on consumer brands. We think this doesn't really work maybe for like a SaaS company, but yeah, focused on consumer brands, looking for consumer brands that have amazing products. I think that's like, you know, definitely a focus for us is all of this only works if you have a great product that solves problems for consumers, and definitely has a very broad appeal. But we're open to definitely probably earlier stage. You know, we're not currently looking at, you know, massive, you know, Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 brands. We don't think that that's quite as exciting. We think what's exciting for the consumer is to join early when the brand is still growing and there's still a lot of opportunity. And so we're looking for those brands who, you know, I would typically say are kind of pre-seed, friends and family round, maybe up to like a Series A or a Series B. So definitely, and doesn't have to be a VC-backed company or someone necessarily going down that route, but kind of in that phase.
Yeah.
So kind of in that earlier, I would definitely say we want to look at companies that have a product, usually that have some traction. They've shown that people want the product and are willing to pay for it. But they're looking for growth fuel. They're looking for, you know, how do I take this to the next level?
And then your platform does what for them, assuming they get through that process and it's a, you know, mutual decision to join Mutiny.
Yeah. So then for us, we sit down with that brand and say, how do we get you to where you want to go? What are the key moments? What are the key events that have to happen? You know, that might be a crowdfunding campaign. That might be an in-store launch. For those who have run a consumer brand, it's really nerve-wracking when you go into, you know, 1,200 stores nationwide and you're like, well, hopefully this works. Hopefully we sell product and people love what we're doing. And even when you have a great product, that's still scary because it's like, what if our packaging is wrong? What if we get put in the wrong location? You know, what if the marketing hasn't quite hit the way we wanted? Because if this doesn't sell through, not only are they going to drop us, we might have to buy inventory back. And so it's sitting down with the brand and saying, what are the key moments that would make this company a success? And how do we build a movement around it? How do we give you kind of a core love group of a large number of people who can help us push and drive this. And like Cole said earlier, everything is performance driven. So it's, if we can accomplish these things for you, we get ownership in return. If we don't accomplish them, then we don't. And so I think it's very low risk of it. We only get these things if we perform and do the things we say we're going to do.
And from a how perspective, here's the marketing plug. So, consumers who are interested in this, download the Mutiny app right now, just on the Apple Store, and go to joinmutiny.com. But for brands, if you go to joinmutiny.com, there's a tab at the top that says Our Brands, and that's where you can kind of fill out a quick form and get a hold of us. Find me or Jay on LinkedIn. Find a way to connect with us, and we'd love to just chat through whether it's a fit now, whether it's I talked to a brand last week that they work through for their food product, they work through one distributor and have 2 clients, but the end consumer doesn't know their brand. They see it at restaurants but they don't know what the brand is. But in 6 months, they're going to have a consumer facing brand that they want to launch in retail. So that's the window that our community based approach would make a lot of sense. So I would just say connect with us, and we'll see what makes sense and when it makes sense.
So it sounds like if somebody calls you, you guys have a discussion, you come up with a game plan. If you accomplish what the game plan is, you get equity in their business, hope for a liquidity event. The consumer gets some equity. Everybody builds a broader marketing audience to reach out to understand what people are thinking, maybe in real time or ahead of real time. And at the end of the day, everybody wins.
That is the mission statement. Well said, John. We'll pay you a marketing fee now.
I'll take equity in Mutiny. Is that
there we go? Well said.
Deal.
Yeah. All right. Quick speed round, fellas. Quick speed round. Jay, we'll start with you because you have a lot of books behind you. A book that's made an impact on you.
Oh man, one of my favorite probably fiction books is a book called Name of the Wind. So incredible book. Can't say enough good things about it. Even if you're not a fantasy fan, everyone should read it.
Name of the Wind?
Name of the Wind, yeah, by Patrick Rothfuss.
Okay. All right, good. Cole, what about you? Book that made a big impact.
You're just going to giggle at this one. I can come up with a lot better ones, but the biggest impact on me that ensured my literacy was when somebody gave me a Harry Potter book in 4th grade, and I laughed at them and said, "I don't read when I go on vacation. That's what school's for."
Yeah.
And then I read the first 4 Harry Potters on that one family vacation.
Oh, wow.
So impact to me being able to read things on pages, J.K. Rowling.
Okay. All right. Next question. Jay, we'll go back to you. If you could have coffee with anybody living or dead, who would it be and why?
Ooh, right now, I would probably say, man, Elon Musk would be fascinating. I think he'd just be so interesting to hear, just from an innovator's standpoint. Would be fascinating to hear some of his stories.
I just interviewed Eric Jorgensen with Scribe Media, who wrote. He just wrote a book on Elon. It was like I aired it a couple weeks ago, but it's a really it's called The Book of Elon. It's a really interesting book, and it was a great interview. He spent, I think, 5+ years, researching Elon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cole, how about you?
The collection would come from our founding fathers. I mean, I think Franklin or Hamilton, as we gear up towards a celebration of our country, I think what they set up was just distinctly unique at a hard time in which nobody in the world was talking about the freedoms that they were fighting for.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of research for some unrelated reasons, and I think in the late 1700s, early 1800s, 2% of the population of the world had access to religious freedom, and it was because of the infancy of the United States. So I'd go back in time a little bit with some of them.
That was definitely a PhD answer. I like that. All right.
No one's accused me of that, John. Sorry.
That was good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received, Jay?
Oh man, That's a great question. I'm trying to think of the best wisdom. Man, I'm drawing a blank.
I've never said anything to Jay that inspires him. That's for sure.
That's right.
Definitely true.
Yeah.
I'll start first. Be yourself and try not to care how others perceive that. Hopefully yourself is a good version, but don't try to fit into other people's skin. Be yourself and be comfortable that maybe that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah. Good. Well said.
That's actually, it made me think of one of our favorite kind of slogans or words of wisdom at Creatively is a Dolly Parton quote that's very similar, but she said, figure out who you are and then do it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you got to be really careful that you're not trying to be other people, especially as an entrepreneur. You just have to lean into, this is who I am, this is who I'm not, and just do it on purpose.
Yeah, that's a great thing to end on purpose. Fellas, this was great. Congratulations. I'm excited to, watch the business soar and all great things that come from it. I think we're in a time where people want to feel more connected to something. If people are feeling, with all the technology and all the social media and everything, people feel more disconnected. So to connect to something that they're passionate about and that they love and that they can stand behind and be, a real ambassador of something while also feeling like there's upside and can provide a brand intel that they may not be able to get otherwise, I think is great. In business, I've always found, and I say this when I coach people, it's less today in a hybrid world, but I always felt this even when in business, when I was in offices or like running like businesses, the most overlooked at many times person, but who knew every single thing in the office was the person who sat at the front desk, the receptionist. They knew everything. They knew absolutely everything. And there were so many businesses where I will go in and I'll say, well, what does the receptionist think? And they'll say, what are you talking about? I said, well, they know every single thing that's going on in the entire company. Everybody tells them. And it's your business model kind of reminds me of that. It's the everyday person who is invested, who is connecting to different senses and can give such raw data without worrying, to your point, Cole, of what anybody thinks, because it's just how they feel. And I think your platform does that. And I think if a brand dials in, VCs are great, but sometimes they're thinking too much about the bottom line and they lose the feeling. And we need the feel. We need the, in Yiddish, it's called, we got to know what they're feeling in their kishkas. It's like the intuitive feel of all of it. So good luck with everything, fellas. We'll have you on again in like 6 months or so, and we'll continue the conversation. But I appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can learn more about you guys and, whether they want to be a consumer or a brand, how they can connect with you.
JoinMutiny.com.
Yeah. The easiest place.
All right.
John, thank you. Great to reconnect and chat soon.
This was great. JoinMutiny.com. And if you want to talk to me, JohnDwoskin.com. Fellas, appreciate you both. Thanks.
Thank you
so much.